It's more poetry time, and so this is Dale Ritterbush from his one of his books of poetry, Lessons Learned, um, which is a military phrase after there's been a battle or there's been some action in the field. Um, the commander and usually a junior officer is tasked to write a report. Um, and part of the report includes lessons learned because you have to indicate basically what has the military learned from this encounter with the enemy or from whatever happened, and how should they change their behaviors and so on. The military is a very very rigid, conservative institution. When I say conservative, I don't mean that they like the right wing. I mean that they small c conservative. They very bound up in tradition, hold on to the way they do things, and they don't like to change things. So having a junior officer say, "Oh, we should have done this instead of that," is like, yeah, they've heard that before. So Dale's book is called Lessons Learned. So in other words, these are the lessons that he, a combat soldier, has learned after the war. So it's ironic. Dale Ritterbush is an enormously ironic, has a wonderful ironic. His poetry has this amazing ironic tone to it, and it's bitter and it's ruthless, and he tells the truth, and it's wonderful poetry. He's got no time for sentiment, and wow, what a writer, amazing. So this one is called. This one's called Search and Destroy. And now, of course, the background for Search and Destroy. I put it together with Go Tell the Spartans because this is the beginning of that project of changing from resettlement to search and destroy missions when the war is widened and starts to become the sort of out and out, dreadful combat. Okay. So in the story, and I'll come back through it, in the story, the soldiers are observing basically what's happened in a village or a ville. Okay. So it's a search and destroy mission. They came out of the hooch with their hands up, surrendered. And we found all that rice and a couple of weapons. They were tagged, and it all seemed so easy. Too easy. And someone started to torch the hooch, and I stopped him. Something was funny. We checked the hooch a couple more times. I had them probe it, like we were searching for mines. And a lucky poke with a knife got us the entrance to a tunnel. We didn't wait for any damn tunnel rats. We threw down CS and smoke, and maybe 200 yards to our right, two gooks popped up, and we got them running across the field. Nailed them before they hit the trees. We went to the other hole and popped more gas and smoke and a fragmentation grenade, and 3 gooks came out coughing, tears, red smoke pouring into their eyes and nose. We thought there were more, so we threw in another grenade, and one of the dinks brought down his arms, and maybe he started to sneeze with all that crap running out of his face, and maybe he had a weapon concealed. I didn't know. So I greased him. Wasn't much else I could do. A sudden move like that. So the narrator here is, a very particular kind of person, right? And this is one of the things that Dale is so good at is capturing these different personalities that will show up, and he's got no patience. He's fed up. He wants to survive, and the war is meaningless, and so he's not taking any chances. He's basically going to kill people in front of him because they're Vietnamese. That's it. So this is one of the situations I talked about in lecture 1, the background lecture, where you go on these search and destroy missions and you're not going to find young men because, as they say, the young men have been taken away. What you're looking for is caches of rice, caches of weapons, right? And you find either one, big caches of rice, and they did find big caches of rice. then it means that the town or the ville or the hamlet is feeding an army. Now, they may not have any choice about it. I mean, the North Vietnamese or the Viet Cong may come to the village and say, support us and grow rice for us, or we'll burn you out, or we'll kill you. So they're like, okay, all right, we're going to grow your rice. So they grow the rice, and they hope that the Americans don't show up and don't get lucky when they look. So the civilians are caught between these two, as they say, caught between two fires. So a hooch is the American slang term for a Vietnamese home, which doesn't look like an actual house to them because they're made of this, which I mentioned, bamboo, straw thatch, which is very thick on top, leaves, and so on. And they have mud in the walls, and they can be really very substantial homes, and they can be cool in the summer or cool in the heat because the walls hold the humidity and then they give it off in the heat, and so inside it's cooler rather than hotter. They have a high ceiling and so on. So, but the Americans call those hooches, not homes, and they also take hooch, which is really an American term, over, and they talk about their own hooches. So it's one of these things where it's like, is it racist or is it descriptive? But they don't say homes. They don't say houses. So in that sense, it is racist in the sense that the Americans don't see houses when they look at these handmade homes. Okay, so they came out of their hooch with their hands up, surrendered, and we found all that rice. So it's like, we found all that rice. Like he's explaining himself. We found all that rice. And it's like, like what do you think? Why do you think I shot him? They were tagged, and it all seemed so easy. So they put tags on the men, basically saying, found in village X, likely Viet Cong, and so on. Too easy. Okay, so then one of them starts to Zippo the hooch, and the officer, presumably the man who's watching it, the officer, the narrator, something's funny. So they poke around and they find a spider hole. Spider hole means that they've dug a tunnel, not just to hide in, but to snipe from. That's the argument. And that there will be a tunnel running 100, 200 yards, sometimes all the way to a tree line. And this has to be dug by hand. There's no, it's like dug with these small shovels. And the soil of Vietnam is this thick, muddy, heavy soil. So if you can imagine, shoveling underground with a scoop, basically, and having to carry out all the dirt, it is hard work, and there's not enough air, and so on. People pass out in the tunnels. Okay, so these tunnels are really something. These tunnel complexes are really something. And you can actually, if you've visited Vietnam, and some of you will have, you can actually go into the tunnel complexes near Marble Mountain or at Cu Chi, which is where the most famous tunnel complexes are. It's a whole other thing I'll talk about. So they get a small tunnel complex, and then they throw in CS. CS is like a gas. It's like tear gas, basically. So it's an irritant. It'll, you start to cry, and your nose produces these rivers of mucus, and it's just that's it. You can't do anything. And so maybe 200 yards to our right, two gooks popped up. Okay, so one of the standard references. This actually comes from Korea, where some of the populace refer to themselves, and they were cooks. I think it's Khuk. Which is they're actually a people. It's like the Karen population in Myanmar. But this became sort of a generic name for any Asian. So it moved over to Vietnam because a lot of the people who fought in Vietnam had fought especially if they were officers in Vietnam, they had fought in Korea and then joined the army. So they had fought in Korea, go to Vietnam. This is what happens with the major Burt Lancaster character who has fought in World War II, fought in Korea, and is now a major, but he's been sidelined because he's he doesn't care. He's like, no, whoops, we're going to, we're, keep your heads down. We're gonna we're gonna try to survive this stupid war, as he calls it, a sucker's tour. Okay, so they throw a bunch of smoke and gas basically into the tunnels, and two people pop out and start running towards the field, and that's it. Anybody who's running must be guilty. This is actually American policy. At a certain point in the war, early in the war, the men in the field began to say, how do we know, since everybody's wearing black pajamas, and this is something I meant to talk about from the Tom Paxton song, because he talks about black pajamas. The VC typically wore black pajamas. Well, everybody wore these black pajamas. They were made of silk very often, and they were work clothes, and they were cool, which was the point, because it's such a hot country. But everybody wore them. So they talked about the guerrillas wearing black pajamas. It's like, well, everybody wore black pajamas. It's like saying, then I saw them in their jeans, and I knew they were guerrillas. It's like, everybody wears jeans, or whatever it is. Everybody wears Ugg boots. Well, I guess they don't anymore. We knew they were the enemy because they were wearing Uggs. So they just kill them because they're running. So the idea was, well, how do we know if it's an enemy? And the Pentagon came back with this actual piece of policy, and they said, if you approach Vietnamese and they don't run, they may or may not be Viet Cong. You can question them. You have to look at their papers and so on, see if it's legit. But if they run from you, and that means if you're coming in a helicopter or in a tank, and they turn and run, you can shoot them, because everybody who is going to run will be guilty. So the innocent don't run; they wait. Okay, so you see a helicopter flying towards you, a gunship, and it's shooting everything around you. You don't run? No, you got to stand still. So they're running. So they nail them. Okay, they wait. We went to the other hole and popped more gas and smoke, and a fragmentation grenade. Okay, these are really nasty. It's just what you imagine. Obviously, it's the grenade is designed to blow apart, and it has inside it typically it's designed to blow into shrapnel, so you're not going to survive that. And they throw smoke in as well, so they actually come out smoking. And then they just throw in grenades. And so then this guy comes out. Oh, he says one of the dinks brought down his arms. So Gooks, dinks, slopes, all very typical racist terms for Vietnamese. Really any Asian at this point, but maybe start to sneeze. So he's just, because he's been gassed, right? CS gas, so tear gas. So he's, so this mucus is just pouring out of his nose, and he'd be coughing and his eyes tearing, and it's just like pouring. Your eyes are just pour tears, like being pepper sprayed, with all that crap running out of his face. Maybe he had a weapon concealed. I don't know. So I greased him. So we've got nailed. They nail the two runners. There's another one here, and then he greased him, which is again. So there's this. It's like, you don't kill anybody. Nobody gets killed. They get nailed. They get greased. They get offed. And O'Brien talks about this in other parts of his book. And then, but he's explaining himself. It's like he knows he's guilty. He knows that this has been trouble. Wasn't much else I could do. A sudden move like that. So who knows? It's just that he decided he was going to kill this. This person has become a sort of sociopathic killer, in the sense that they no longer have any feelings left, and they just want to survive. Yeah, amazing poem.